Let me give you some advice. Most advice sucks. And in this video, I'm going to give you some recommendations about how to deal with what's known as the advice paradox. At the end, you're going to have to make a choice, whether to listen to me or ignore me. And that's the whole point. The advice paradox relates to how we overcome challenges in life. Sometimes one of the worst things we can do is just plug away with a problem and not ask for help. So you turn to someone who you can trust, who cares for you, or has gone through a similar situation in the past. And this seems perfectly reasonable. Why plug it away at a problem that someone else has already solved and they can give you some techniques to deal with? This is how the human race has become so dominant. We've built on what others have done before us and not always just started from scratch. Of course, not all advice is equal. Some of it's terrible. Maybe because the person has no idea what they're talking about, or that circumstances were different for them when they face a similar challenge. The bigger issue though is that it becomes overwhelming. We know that listening to advice is useful to us, but the more we listen doesn't mean the better equipped we are. It means the opposite. And herein lies the paradox. We have to choose what advice to listen to and what to ignore. So, what advice is there to deal with that question? If your head's already spinning by this point, then don't worry, it's supposed to. If you've watched my previous videos, then you'll know that I quite like reading a self-help book, which are the epitome of advice. There aren't exactly many self-help books specialising in the abstract concept of advice itself. Therefore, what it really comes down to is critical thinking. We have to analyse what's given to us and make a decision on what to ignore and what to follow. And here comes the most ironic section of any YouTube video ever. My advice on how to deal with the advice paradox. Now, as with most people, the best I can do here is say, here are 5 principles that have worked for me, not that there's some sort of golden list that you have to follow. Number 1, be decisive. At some point you have to make a call. And when you do, make sure you commit to whatever you decide for a reasonable amount of time for it to work. It's easy to get paralysed by too many different pieces of advice you follow, but one thing you can be sure of is that you have to commit to the path you take. Even the best approach may be undone by going in half-hearted or giving up when you don't see instant results. Number 2 is never follow advice from someone who hasn't put it in practice themselves. At the end of the day, things can always sound great in theory, but they don't always work out that way. And if the person giving you that advice hasn't ever actually followed it through to test it themselves, then it's maybe not worth following. I use this more of a rule of thumb to be fair, but I do find myself following this more and more. Number 3, never be afraid of hurting someone's feelings. Sometimes I find myself taking advice of others because I don't want to hurt their feelings or just to get them off my back. However, if the choice is yours and yours alone, they need to respect your decision. If their feelings are hurt, then it's likely their ego is involved. In which case, they are more interested that you take their advice than that things work out for you. So maybe they shouldn't be someone you listen to anymore. Which brings me on to principle number 4. Keep your circle of trust small, and I mean very small. To avoid getting overwhelmed with all the opinions out there and advice people are giving you, I find myself just narrowing it down to 2 people. My wife and my older brother. So if I'm in a situation where I'm not sure what to do, I'll speak to those 2 first, and that gives me enough to go on. I don't need to then speak to them and then go into everyone else who wants to give me advice. Number 5. Hindsight isn't always the best way to judge advice. Just because something turned out badly doesn't mean the advice you took was wrong. More importantly, just because things worked out doesn't mean that you made the right choice either. For example, a few years ago my wife and I were saving up to buy a house. And like everyone who's done this, you know it can be a slow grind putting away savings every month whilst you're also paying rent. Now imagine someone told me to go to the bank, withdraw all our money, not tell my wife and just go to the nearest casino. Put everything on the one roulette wheel and I double our money instantly. Would this still be good advice I took? I mean, after all, if things work out then it looks great in hindsight. But of course it wouldn't be. It'd be terrible advice. Not telling my wife, risking months of hard work from both of us. I could have lost our money and potentially the relationship as well. Therefore, don't make the mistake of just judging advice based on hindsight and then following the same advice in the future when you're in a similar situation. It may have only worked out the first time due to dumb luck. So it's up to you now, of course, to choose whether you want to maybe follow some of those recommendations or maybe have your own. I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below, and if you did enjoy this video, I'll put a link to some other videos which I think you might also enjoy as well.